Good afternoon, and welcome to today's industry-presented webinar, Essential Elements of Heart-Based Training, Key Concepts and Practical Applications for Training. Today's webinar is presented by Polar Electro, Inc. Polar Electro, Inc. is a manufacturer of sports training computers, particularly known for developing the world's first wireless heart rate monitor. Listening to your body is one thing, understanding what it is telling you is an altogether different story. Polar helps you to get under the skin of your training. They attribute their success to a combination of expertise in sports, physiology, and electronics, coupled with a deep understanding of customer needs. It's no surprise that they've been leading the way in technological innovations and heart rate monitors since 1977. Today, Polar employs 1,200 people worldwide, manufactures all products in its fully owned factories, has 26 subsidiaries globally, and manages a distribution network supplying more than 35,000 retail outlets in more than 80 countries. One continuing education credit, or CEC, courtesy of Polar Electro Inc., will be emailed to all participants after the webinar. You should receive the CEC email and a link to the presentation within the next 1 to 2 days. There is no need to email ACSM asking about CEC credit. Today's webinar presenter is Brett Lato. Brett has a Master of Arts degree from the University of Northern Iowa and a Bachelor of Science degree from Louisiana State University. Brett currently serves as Manager of Training and Education with Polar Electro and has worked with heart rate technology for more than 10 years. In his role, he works directly with personal trainers, physical educators, fitness directors, health club owners, strength and conditioning staff, and various collegiate and professional coaches across the country. Brett works with a team of skilled trainers at Polar who conduct hundreds of online and on-site trainings annually, educating professionals on how best to utilize and incorporate heart rate-based training into their unique programs. It's with great pleasure that we present to you Brett Lato.
All right, thank you, Paul, for the kind introduction. And I just want to let everyone know here today that I am certainly happy to be presenting for you, and I sincerely hope that you can take away some things from the presentation that you can use inside your clubs, on your own, with your athletes or your clients in general. So hopefully this is an educational, useful, informative webinar today. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. The title for the presentation today is Essential Elements of Heart Rate-Based Training. Key concepts and practical applications will be discussed throughout the training, and we'll allude to specific concepts related to large group, small group, and personal training. So all three pieces will be covered, as well as some aspects that can be used for personal use. Okay, we have some learning objectives here today. I'm just going to flash them up on the screen. No need to discuss them. They'll come up as the slides go. These will be important as you guys look for those CECs at the end. We'll be using these to guide our training. So these are the key topics. Wearables and heart rate training have come a long way since being introduced to cross-country skiers in the 1980s. The Polar Sport Tester PE 2000, that's a mouthful, was introduced in 1982, and it was the first ever wireless heart rate monitor ever used for training. Back then, the tech was almost exclusively used for athletes. And now, as you can see, just by walking around anywhere you go, everyone with a pulse has a monitor. Heart rate technology and the related training principles, like many other things over time, has evolved significantly. There is simply no denying now that more than ever, we live in a world where data drives decisions. Long gone are the days that you can simply put a few weights on the bar, prescribe 3 sets of 10, a couple miles on the treadmill, and then call it a day. The internet has Google Analytics. Major League Baseball has Moneyball. The NBA has a player efficiency rating, right? And the fitness industry and its innovators rely heavily on the data provided by wearable tech. So there's no denying it. We do rely on the data, and it does drive our decisions. The use of data in this industry really is no longer a luxury or a bonus. Just as we've seen it in sports, In business and in marketing, data has quickly become the standard in fitness. With current technology, heart rate data can be collected in almost any environment, with sensors the size of a nickel or wrist units that receive text messages. We can track, trend, and monitor data in real time. And unlike in 1982, the metrics go well beyond measuring your heartbeat. In the next segment, I'll briefly address some of the additional metrics provided by wearables that are utilized to enhance aspects of training design, and accountability. But this will not be our main focus today. Like heart rate, these additional metrics can be used across all modes of training, but they have proven to be most valuable with regard to personal training and program design. Sorry guys, I jumped a little far ahead there. Okay, so our first slide is going to be dealing with the measure of activity, right? And activity is measured by an accelerometer that is in each of the devices that you wear, or at least the wrist units they are. A lot of the sensors out there, whether it's a chest strap or an armband, those typically don't have the accelerometers in them, so you won't get these metrics. So if you are implementing any type of training that involves a multi-use device, right, where you're getting heart rate and you're getting acceleration data, you're going to be able to take advantage of some of these features, and I'll detail those in just a moment. So why measure activity at all? Why is it relevant to training? For starters, there's accountability. The data doesn't lie. Coaches, clients alike have the ability to monitor all types of activity 24/7, so nothing goes undocumented. This kind of information can spark important discussions about lifestyle choices as well as program design. Both the client and the trainer are held to account when the data is present, and it's always there. The trainer is responsible for what happens at the gym or the facility or the practice, right? And the client is obviously responsible for what happens outside of it. But all will be recorded and all will be documented and accessible. Next, there's motivation. Attainable goals provide opportunities for success. Small wins help with self-efficacy and can improve motivation to repeat those positive behaviors over time. Set, track, adjust, and achieve daily activity goals using a training diary. Use the data to make precise adjustments and to assist with weekly follow-ups. As you all can see here on the screen, there's a small square there. It's an iPad, and it's got a training diary on it. So this is a small glimpse of the power of the data you can collect on these devices. And as a trainer or a coach, or even as an individual, you can see there's a ton of data here at your fingertips. And each little colorful dot on that screen is clickable, and it expands into more detail, right? So just to give you a quick guide, because there'll be some slides here as we go through that have some of these symbols on it. The orange triangle, that is for inactivity. Anything in blue is for activity during the day, not training, but activity. And anything in red is typically heart rate training. So planned exercise is recorded. So you can see, get a full snapshot there. Buried somewhere within the diary is also sleep data, which we'll get to in a moment as well. So as you can see, there's many reasons to measure activity, and accessing the data has never been easier. Okay, why else? There's plenty of other reasons. Precise training data is very important, or precise training design, I should say. You want precise training data as well. Without the accurate data, obtaining objective understandings of a person's fitness level and level of activity is nearly impossible, right? You don't know what happens during the day-to-day, and you certainly don't have an objective measure for it. Trends in activity can be used to map out realistic and effective training programs that fit your client's needs. We can address barriers to success. I think these are very significant. because all too often we find with our clients or people who are looking to make changes in their life for the better, right? That's why they come to us. They have barriers, and it's our job to help them get over those barriers. Again, that's why they pay us. That's why they're coming to us for that guidance. A couple of things that you may not have known or you may not have addressed in the past are huge barriers, and that is sedentary time. Okay, excessive sedentary time can reduce the effectiveness of training, and it has a negative overall effect on health. Okay, and without the data to identify this problem, there can be no solution. Sleep is so very important. Okay, this is another barrier. Among other things, lack of sleep can limit gains or cause increases in appetite, which we know will send us down the wrong path if weight loss is indeed our goal. Okay, only when both the client and the trainer are aware that there is a problem can the problem be solved. No sleep data, no solutions, right? If we have no sedentary data, then we have no solution because we don't realize there's a problem. Okay, so these can bring about great conversations that you can use to help your people reach their goals. Okay, we can also prevent overtraining and undertraining. Okay, these are with our higher end athletes, typically people who are looking to make gains rather than losses. Okay, they push too hard. We've got to slow them down. Okay, use nightly recharge. It's a new feature that Polar has launched, and there are other features with different devices as well, but this is what Polar uses, what I'm familiar with. Okay, you can use nightly recharge to determine daily what happens with exercise, or what types of exercise should be done and at what intensity. Measuring activity can assist with nutritional recommendations as well. Know exactly how many calories they are getting, or how many calories they are burning, I should say, in a given day, week, or month. And with that information, you can make much better and much more precise recommendations. Remove the guesswork, balance calorie intake by understanding accurately the amount that has been expended. Simple solution. Okay, so we're going to dive into some of these things a little more specifically. So we just talked about calorie expenditure. Why calculate total energy expenditure? And what I mean by total energy expenditure is just that, everything. So we're including sedentary time, sleep time, physical activity, and exercise throughout the day. And these devices have the ability to measure all of those things. Trainers can enhance programs aimed at weight loss or gain, that's obvious. They can design precise nutritional plans, as we talked about, and they can make detailed recommendation. Coaches can ensure athletes consume enough calories, right, following their training. That's a big concern for colleges and professional sports teams all across the country. Okay, they burn a ton of calories while they're out working, and sometimes they burn calories when they're not supposed to, when they're supposed to be resting. And it's important that they put the fuel back in their body so that they continue to maintain their status. And finally, trainers can encourage clients to visit the training facility regularly. Okay, this is one of my favorites. I speak with club owners and managers all the time, and one of the things they're always looking to do, in addition to helping their clients, right? Clients come first, but they're looking to help, but they're also looking to make money. And this is one of those ways where you can objectively and sincerely recommend that a client or customer or an athlete come to see you more, because now you have data that's not just in the gym, but outside of the gym, and you have sleep data, you have all these things. You have the big picture, and you can see in a given week, if they only come to you one time, they're not likely to be hitting their fitness goals, right? So just for example, 7 workouts across 2 weeks at 500 calories each is 3,500 calories. That's 1 pound. This is the very simple example I like to use, right? So I know if someone comes to me 7 times in 2 weeks, and we design training plans to get them to burn 500 calories each time they come, and that may not be realistic for everyone, right? But that's just the example. If we can do that, I can confidently say we're going to burn 3,500 calories, and if we have our diet in check, we're going to burn 1 pound. And that's tangible, and that's something that you can actually monetize. Okay, it's great for the customer. It's also great for the owner or the trainer or the manager. Okay. No one questions whether or not sleep is important. So this is another one. Sleep is essential, okay? And it's And in its absence, a sleep-deprived individual is actually harming their health. Okay, the data is very clear, and it's recommended that adults get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. You've probably heard that. So understanding sleep trends for your clients, especially if they're not getting enough, is important, because deprivation can have significant effects, not just on their health, but athletic performance. So this is especially important for your athletes. It's definitely a big concern of the college coaches that I work with, and it can actually have effects negatively on submaximal or prolonged exercise as well. So if you are conducting these types of trainings with your clients and they're not getting enough sleep, they're going to be impaired and not make the gains that they're after. So that's why it's important to track and trend sleep as well. Okay, this nightly recharge, this is Polar's verbiage of a form of state of readiness, right, or a form of recovery. Okay, so Polar assesses recovery or readiness using the feature titled Nightly Recharge. Understanding recovery, nightly recharge, and how well clients recover from the demands of their day can provide key insights for future training design. Okay, it can reduce burnout, and it can also prevent overtraining, all things that are very important to us. Nightly recharge is calculated by combining a sleep score, okay, because we do record the sleep. It takes that score that you get from your sleep, and it takes a score that you get from how well your autonomic nervous system recovers. Okay, we call that ANS recharge. So it takes the ANS recharge, it takes the sleep score, puts them together, and it gives you this nightly recharge score. Okay, the ANS recharge score is calculated by measuring your heart rate variability, which is a hot topic in the industry right now. People are using that for a lot of different things, especially recovery. And it's no surprise that Polar is too. Okay, it uses heart rate variability, and breathing rate, and it provides information on how well you calm down during the night. And I believe it actually accesses or looks at only the first 4 hours of your sleep to kind of see where you are. Okay, and with those statistics, and I believe it takes a month, you need to record this for a month. With those statistics, you can then begin changing what you do on a day-to-day basis. So maybe what you have planned doesn't fit with where they are in terms of recovery, because of any number of factors. Stress at home, they went out drinking the night before. That happens with the athletes from time to time, unfortunately. Lots of different things can affect it, not just the training, like overtraining in the gym. So there's stresses on the body and the mind that happen all throughout the day. These things all combine and will affect the ANS recharge score at night and give you a different reading in the morning. And you can then use that to change or adjust your plans if needed. So it's very valuable. Okay, the primary objective, so that's just a review of all of the, we'll call it the non-heart rate features of these devices that are out there. As I told you, they've evolved a lot since their inception. The primary objective for this presentation is to expand awareness and understanding on the topic of heart rate-based training specifically. Okay, we'll cover the essential concepts, tips, and tricks necessary to implement successful programs with a focus on personal, small, and group training. Okay, we won't likely cover many more of the acceleration-based data. I believe you guys can find more information in my previous webinar last year. You can access that through YouTube. There's a little bit more about it there. And if you guys have some questions at the end relating to those pieces, I'm happy to talk about them. But for the rest of the presentation, we're going to really focus on heart rate and heart rate training. Okay, why measure heart rate? The obvious one right in front of you is objective feedback. Okay, we can eliminate the guesswork just in the same way that we did with the accelerometers, right, in the activity tracking. We can eliminate the guesswork and make better decisions because of it. Okay, you wouldn't get in a car and go riding down the road without looking at your gauges, right? You would want to know how much gas you have. You'd want to know how hot the engine is, right? So if you know you're going to blow a gasket, things like this. So it's very important that you have an objective measure if you plan to be serious about what's going on with your athletes or your clients and leading them to gains efficiently, right? So which brings me to the next one, accuracy and reliability. Okay, it's a gold standard, period, the end. It's a gold standard. There's a linear relationship with energy expenditure during steady state training. So that means heart rate rises, right, at the same rate of energy expenditure, making it a perfect gauge to know how intensely or how hard someone is working. Okay, this is not the case with high intensity training. Okay, we'll get to that a little bit later in the slides. We'll go in more detail. Okay, it's not the case with high intensity training or things like strength training. But there we're more interested in recoveries, right? Or calories expended overall rather than the rise in heart rate from moment to moment. So it's a little different in how you use the data, but for the most part, it is the gold standard for each type of training. Okay. The other reasons are efficiency. We want purposeful training to ensure that you're training hard enough, but not too hard, because we have goals and we want to reach them, and we don't want to overtrain. So it allows us to really analyze what's happening from moment to moment and over time, and really helps us prescribe the right types of training. Precision. We want to ensure that you're training at the right intensity for the proper intervals. So if we indeed designed a HIIT training with specific intervals and cool downs and rest and all these different things, if the trainer that's implementing that is not following the protocol or not leading us down the right path to get us to the goals where we want to be, okay, by not conducting the proper training protocol, we can assess that, okay, and we can actually go back to the drawing board, we can do a little coaching, and we can fix it, because the goal is going to be specific, whatever it is you're doing. You might be working on endurance, you might be working on speed or performance. These things are specific, and it comes with a specific type of trick, so you need to be aware of that and pay attention if you want to be precise. Another big one is safety. Okay, we always hear the stories about athletes passing out or fainting or getting heat exhaustion. Okay, many of these things could be prevented if we had a reliable gauge on that athlete or on that person. And just having that knowledge in real time is extremely valuable, because now you know when to push and when to back off. Okay, for the most part, athletes or clients are gonna back off when they feel uncomfortable, and sometimes it's important to push them through that uncomfort, but we need to be wise about it, and having this type of data can help us make those types of tough decisions. Okay, also helps with follow-up. Okay, I talk to people all the time, and these are people who really want to make an impact, and obviously, again, like I said, want to make money in their facilities, whatever it is they're doing, because it's a results-oriented business, and they don't have anything to talk about. Okay, you can only say, how's your mom, how's your aunt, how's your kids, so many times when they walk in the door before you lose someone and they just peg you as disingenuous or not an expert. So imagine if you had, an entire library of specific and really great intimate data on their training. And imagine if you took that data and actually used it to provide specific, relevant feedback. It's all too easy if you have a heart rate monitor on someone, or an activity tracker, or both, because now you can track daily, weekly, monthly progress, and you can provide follow-ups on all of those things across all of the different metrics. So it's a no-brainer to me in terms of the value of a follow-up if it's used properly. Okay, why train with heart rate? Okay, we talked about why measure heart rate, but why train with it? Okay, design phase training sessions is one reason. Okay, you have two types of training, and I don't think these are in the literature anywhere. I think these are things I made up, or maybe I saw somewhere subconsciously. But when I work with customers all the time, they have specific training goals, right? And we might have a proactive training or a reactive training based on those things. So proactive means we're going to design the workout specifically based on heart rate. This works best with steady state type training, cardio training, where we can literally plot out a course on the left side there. As you see, I have the heart rate zones. We can plot it out, and you follow that to a T. And the members, they will adjust their intensities based on the heart rate, not based on the instructor pushing them, right? Because if that's the case, it's going to be a reactive training. They're going to be reacting to what's happening on the outside. This happens often in boot camp settings. Everybody's doing different things at different times, or a circuit, I work with Les Mills quite a bit. Their body pump type training is very reactive, right? A lot of people have different weights, different fitness levels. Their heart rate's going to respond in different ways. Whereas with a bike or a piece of treadmill equipment, you can actually have a proactive type training, and you can add a lot of value there because it really adds a lot of specificity to what you're doing. So if you have specific training goals, as I said, you can really, really hone in and get the desired effect. Okay. We can also set specific training goals, as we talked about, calories, session-based goals. Okay. We want to burn X amount of calories for the group or X amount of calories for the individual. Without this metric, without this device, you can't have that. Okay. We can create friendly competitions, a group burn, zone time, training hours. Okay. These are all little rewards, and different platforms have different things, but simply having the data allows you to create these unique competitions, whether it's Polar or some other type of product that you're using. We can also show growth. Resting VO2 max is one place. I'm sorry, resting heart rate. I'm not sure why I did that there. That's a typo. Resting heart rate is one. We have a resting VO2 max test that you can take to show growth. Heart rate recovery is a great one. Heart rate average, if you're going to be doing the same type of activity from pre-test to post-test, is a great gauge of showing growth. And the resting heart rate, as I said, is. So show growth is extremely valuable because we have all kinds of things that these people come to us with, right? They have weight loss goals, they have beach body goals, they have this, and the other. And oftentimes, those things aren't enough. We need to be able to provide multiple and regular mini wins to really facilitate that motivation that they need to keep coming back and back so they can actually get the results over time. Okay, data you can use. That's another reason, and the final reason. So if you're recording all of these things, you will have access to a smorgasbord of data, whether it's heart rate data, activity data, sleep data, the full diary that details everything. Every aspect of training that's recorded is documented, and you can access it at any time for any of those follow-ups I talked about or any of those conversations. So we're at the next part of our training. Okay, we're going to really talk about max heart rate in depth here. Simple concept, very simple concept. However, it is the most essential and it is the key essential first step in any heart rate training program. Okay, max heart rate is often overlooked, often ignored, I feel like, in the industry, and it can cause lots and lots of problems. So it's very important you get it right. We're going to talk about some of those things. So why is determining max heart rate so very important? Simply stated, it's because those zones on the left side, you see the zone 5, zone 4, zone 3, all of these intensity zones, they are 100% based on someone's max heart rate, right, in combination with their intensity level or their work output. Okay, if the max heart rate is wrong, then you're going to get wrong zones, which means you're going to get wrong intensity levels. You're going to get wrong calorie predictions. Okay, you may or may not validate someone's effort, which can be a negative thing. So it's extremely important. And I find that all too often, people really just overlook this. They buy a system or they decide to implement a heart rate training program, and they make this one very, I would call it, huge mistake. And they simply just don't pay attention to the one important thing that's going to set the whole entire program up for success. So I can't stress enough to you how important this is. And so if you're going to undertake a heart rate training program, I highly, highly recommend you do some reading on max heart rate and maybe pay attention to the next few slides so you can understand some ways of correcting it when it is wrong. Okay, max heart rate, we've been talking about it a lot. What is it? Okay, for those of you that are not familiar with it, it's the highest number of beats per minute one can achieve in an all-out effort. It is based on age, heredity, and to a lesser degree, fitness level. Okay, it decreases by age, and as I stated, it's generally not affected by training or fitness level. Okay, you can make some small gains in your max heart rate, but you'll never make the same types of differences as you would see in your resting heart rate, per se. So you may start out with an 80 beats per minute resting heart rate, and you could realistically reduce that down to 60 or even 50 with training over time. Whereas max heart rate, it really takes a lot to move the needle even 1 beat or 2 beats. So for the most part, it's important that you all realize that this is a genetic number that simply decreases by age, and for a lot of people, there's no rhyme or reason why it's higher or lower than one another person. You could have identical twins. One has a max heart rate of 180, another of 170, and they could be at essentially the very same fitness level. So it's not a predictor of fitness, but it is an important number for heart rate based training. Okay, determining heart rate max. The age predicted heart rate max is generally the easy standard. I won't sit here and tell you that it's the best estimation for max heart rate. There are a lot of them out there, but to be honest, I don't even know what the best one is. There's lots out there that include gender and some other different types of things into the equation, but for the most part, anytime you start a program for any device or for any software that's out there, the standard equation is typically going to be 220 minus age. And then you go from there, and that's okay because they're all estimations. The only way you'll really know if something's correct is if you do something like number 4 and you do a clinical based test and you actually get the exact number. The problem with things like the beep test and like a submaximal test, like in a clinical situation, is that unless you're an athlete or someone who's willing to pay for a test like that, chances are you're not really interested in giving an all-out effort until you nearly pass out. So that leaves us trainers and instructors and group fitness leaders, that leaves us somewhere in limbo, and we really have to be creative at how we make adjustments or how we spot issues. Okay, one of the things I like to use and that I highly recommend is session-based heart rate. Okay, and what that basically means is you're going to observe for a week or two, right? 5 or 6 workouts, maybe fewer, and you're going to kind of just pay attention. And as you'll see in the next few slides, you can use rate of perceived exertion to kind of gauge to see if what you're seeing on the screen or what you're seeing on the watch in terms of heart rate reflects that of the rate of perceived exertion. And if it lines up, then it's probably okay. And if you get some discrepancies, then we can go to the drawing board and we can make some adjustments. Okay. This is a rough sketch of a 220 minus age bell curve. I don't think it's an exact correct graph for predicting how often you're going to have some issues or how far, but it's a really, really good gauge, and it's a great guide, and it's a guide that most people in the industry do use. So for the most part, you're going to have about 70% of the population, okay, plus or minus 10 beats, right? 70% of the population, plus or minus 10 beats, they're going to be okay. Their max heart rate is going to be just fine. You won't need to make any adjustments. So that's a sigh of relief, right? It's not like it's a common thing for people to have issues with max heart rate. And then on either side of that bell curve, you could have variance anywhere from 20 to 30 beats, which is significant. On one side of that bell curve, the 15% is really easy to spot. Okay, and I'll show some visuals to support that. On the other side of the bell curve, it's a little bit more difficult, right? So in situations where heart rate max is over predicted for a person, it becomes very difficult to determine if there is an issue with the max heart rate. And that's when you really need to use your professional expertise and your eyes and your ears even, because they'll complain to you, your eyes and your ears, to really tune into that person and use the rate of perceived exertion chart to get it right. Okay. Why is the key first step, as I mentioned before, neglected by so many fitness professionals? The answer is I don't really know, but if I had to guess, I think it's because of all the day-to-day things they have to do in addition to managing a heart rate-based system or a heart rate-based program. And this is actually a symptom of a bigger problem. And the problem in those situations is often that they are using heart rate. There's lots of different ways you can use it, but in most cases, people are using this and they're putting it out on the screen, and it's more of a marketing gimmick as it is than it is a tool. And it works great as a marketing gimmick. In fact, as I said in the very first slide, using heart rate in the industry, even for marketing, is becoming the standard. It's no longer can you not have something like this in for your facility. So you may be getting it just for marketing. If that's the case, you're likely to neglect the 220 minus age issue, right? The estimation issue. If you're really invested in the program, if you're really invested in heart rate-based training, and you are dedicated to having it work and dedicated to your customers and the results they're going to get from using a system like this, then you're going to be on top of it. And those are places where it's not neglected, but in other places, that's the reason. It's more because it's for marketing, it's for show, it's to say we have it, it's to compete with the club next door rather than fully investing in it. So that's my cautionary tale to all of you. If you're using a system like that, just be sure you're fully invested. What are the consequences? They're pretty significant, and at the same time pretty insignificant depending on the person. So what generally happens if you don't pay attention to the discrepancies is you get people like James over here. Now we do have to make a really quick assumption on this slide. We have to make the assumption that James is working out in an anaerobic level, as is everyone else in the facility, right? So James, George, John, Phil, Sean, TJ, we're going to make the assumption that they're all training at about the same rate. So they should all be somewhere near the top of the orange level, okay? The Jameses of the world, if we don't pay attention to them and we don't make the corrections that we need, James is going to be unvalidated. He's going to be frustrated. He's not going to get credit for the calories that he's really burning, right? His calories are going to be underpredicted. He's not going to get credit for the high intensities that he's working out at, and it's going to make him feel a little upset, to be honest. Chances are right after that session, he's going to come to you and talk to you, and that's the first red flag. If you don't make any adjustments after they come to you, then that's a whole other problem in and of itself, right? But the consequence really is that if gone unchecked, James is going to lose faith in heart rate training. He's going to lose interest in heart rate training, and he may lose interest altogether in the facility. So you really want to pay attention for that, tiny 15% of people that do have issues and fix it. The Johns and the Seans on the other end, they're a little easier to fix. And in fact, this could potentially work out in your favor if it's an issue like this where it actually becomes a positive rather than a negative, or a happy accident, we should say. So John's going to be given 104%, Sean's going to be given 105%, and maybe somewhere somebody's given 110%, and they're really excited because they're going to go back home and tell their husbands or their wives or their kids or whomever that they just went to the gym and gave 110%, which sounds great, and it is great, which is precisely why I wait till the next day to burst their bubble. But we've got to bring them in the next day, and we've got to say, hey, listen, we've got your max heart rate. It's a little underpredicted. It's going to skew the calorie counts. It's going to change what your zones are in. We need to get this adjusted down to where you don't go over 100%, because it's physically impossible for someone to go over 100% of their max. So big consequences for James if left unchecked. If John and R left unchecked in terms of the business, maybe not a big deal, but in terms of accurate data and them understanding what's actually happening in the facility, it's going to be a little off, right? So they might be thinking they're burning 700 calories and really they're burning 400, and then they're going to wonder why they're not getting the results, right? That might actually frustrate them in the long run too. So be aware of those two issues, okay? As I told you, 70% of the people, they're going to be just fine, right? The rate of perceived exertion chart, as you can see on the left, lines up perfectly with what's happening in the actual facility and on the heart rate screen, so they're good. So 70%, you can check them off, you can leave them alone. The other 15% on, the one side of the bell curve where they're under predicted, it's going to be very easy to see you can see by my black line here, they're going to go over that red line. They're going to go over the curve, over the intensity zones, and that's just simply not possible. So when we see that, we need to make an adjustment. And I realize we're showing this to you on the graphs here. This is, you know, something of a group report, but if you're doing some individual type training, you can see this in some different graphs as well, and potentially even on right there on the watch or the device that they're using to record the training. Okay, so we want to get that adjusted. And then the Jameses of the world, am I broken? I told you that I would typically use about maybe 3 to 4 workout sessions to get an idea of what's going on with a particular person. And that's very important, because you're going to see over time, you get this big line laid over the top, and they're never going to get above that line. That's going to be their plateau. It's going to be their ceiling. And when they hit their ceiling, that's it. That's where they are. So they're not going to go above it. That's a problem. So we need to change that. We need to decrease their max heart rate so they can get up into the higher zones. Okay. On to the next thing. So hopefully you've all taken away that max heart rate is very important. We can take away that we know how to make adjustments, and we also know that it's very important to make those adjustments to keep people interested in the heart rate training, and so they can get the benefits. Okay, heart rate training 101. We're going to go through this section pretty quick here, but it's just a couple of tips and tricks and just important things that I want to point out from my experience in the industry. Okay, we want to get from here, right, the actual training session where we're recording the data and everything looks great. We want to get from there to the data after the session. We want to get them excited about the data. So this is right after we're done. We want them asking questions, and we want to be able to answer those questions, right? We want to go from training to questions to intrigue to excitement, right? To data to follow-ups to using the data to impact the trainings in the way that I told you at the beginning of the presentation. Taking the heart rate data, taking the activity data, using the diary, even using sleep to really start to personalize training programs for these athletes or for these clients. And I think when you start doing that, you're going to start to see real big results. And when you see big results, or when your clients see those results, they usually keep coming to the gym. So that's important to note, and that's the goal. So again, we want to go from training and recording data to looking at data and being curious about it, to really diving in and doing something with it, as opposed to just putting something flashy up on the screen and ignoring it, right? So before launching a heart rate based program, you want to make sure that you're an expert. So do some reading, come visit some webinars as you're doing right now. So you're probably already in the right place. You're on your way to getting the education that you need in order to implement something like this. Become an expert, because your clients are going to have questions. And when they have questions, they expect you to have the answers. If you don't have the answers, if you don't have them often enough, they're going to lose faith in you as the expert, right? So they're looking to you for advice. They're paying you for your time, and they're spending their time, their valuable time that they could be spending with their kids or at their jobs or doing whatever it is they want. They're coming to you to get results, and they expect you to be an expert, not just in training principles, but if you're running a heart rate based program, they expect you to understand what's going on there too. So invest in education, invest in training for your staff, and don't shortchange that. That's very important. Okay, develop a precise and efficient process. Okay, without those things in place before you launch this, you could have some hiccups. And if you have hiccups or things that don't run smoothly, there could be some problems there. Okay, so start slow. Give it a test run, retest it, practice it with your staff, test it again. Have a soft opening if you have a new facility, or have a soft launch, right, with some friends and family to come in, and really understand what it is you're doing, what your goals are, and where you want to go with this before diving in. And you don't want to kind of fake it till you make it here. You really want to school yourself up and be an expert before launching this. Okay. As I said before, you want to be prepared to confidently answer questions from your clients, and you want to be able to confidently answer objections. Okay. You want to know the difference between ECG and PPT. Okay, this is just fancy short ways of saying optical heart rate and electrical signal heart rate. So we'll have a slide on that in a second. Okay. Be prepared to properly handle the accuracy question. I get this all the time. It drives me absolutely crazy, and maybe you too. Okay, people are always coming in to the facilities that I'm visiting, or even some people that I work with. They're taking a Samsung watch and they're comparing it to the Apple Watch, and they're saying, oh, the Samsung is different than the Apple, so the Apple must not be accurate. Or they're comparing Apple to Polar, and because there's a different reading, it's not accurate because Apple's the one I use and Polar was the one I was trying, so now that's not the right one. Keep in mind that in order to have a true and valid comparison, you've got to have a criterion measure. So if it's heart rate, you shouldn't be comparing any optical sensor to another. You should compare the optical sensor to an electrical chest strap sensor. That's the gold standard in the industry as far as heart rate goes. So keep that in mind. And when your clients come up to you with those types of comments, you have the answer. The answer is that you can't really make those types of comparisons because it's not the same, and you don't know which one is the criterion measure. You don't know which one's more accurate until you test it versus a criterion measure, right? Okay. Back to our topic from a few segments ago there. What is the difference between ECG and PPT? Okay, I'm not going to even try to say the bottom one, but you have your electrocardiograph and your photoplethysmogram. I always butcher that. Okay, and these are the two different types of technology. So if you're going to be using heart rate technology in this day and age, you're going to need to understand the difference. Okay, the electrical signal from the chest strap is pulling it directly from the SA node. That's why it's so accurate. That's why it's the standard. Okay. The optical heart rate sensors, no matter what brand it is a different type of technology. It's more of a pulse monitor rather than a heart rate monitor. Okay, it's using lights to scan through your capillaries, and the light comes back, it reflects back, and there's some algorithms in there, and it runs a calculation, and it gives you a heart rate. And they've gotten really good over the years, and Polar has some of the most accurate, in the industry. So they're very accurate. Okay. But the question you're going to get is which is more accurate. You now know the answer, but it's not so much a question about accuracy, it's a question of reliability. Okay, the Polar optical heart rate technology is accurate. Okay, I know that for a fact, to a degree, right? To a lesser degree than the straps. Okay, but it's just different. It's not that it's less accurate; it's accurate in its own way. Okay, it's certainly more convenient. It's definitely where people are going these days. Optical versus strap. They want the convenience. But the key thing is understanding limiting activities. Okay, you're going to have larger lag times during HIIT and during HIIT sessions versus cardio sessions, or strength training during cardio sessions. It's the same lag time that happens with the strap, but it's exaggerated because it's a peripheral reading, right? Okay, so to improve the reliability of the device, you need to understand the limiting activities, and you need to wear it properly first and foremost. So doing those two things is going to set you up for success, and knowing what you know now is going to help you answer those questions with your clients. Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about strength training versus steady state training, and the optical sensors are certainly better during steady state training, and so is the heart strap. But there's a difference, and I alluded to it before. With strength training, we're really looking at recoveries, not the rise of the heart rate, but looking at the recovery intervals, right? And with steady state training, we can actually take everything into account because it rises linear. So those two things need to be understood too. And that's not just a difference between optical and electrical, that's across both units. Okay, so there is a difference between strength and steady state training. Strength training, we're looking for recoveries. Steady state, we're looking kind of at the whole picture. And for both, we can understand energy, and we can understand calories and everything like that. Proper placement, proper fit, understanding limiting activities, and a customer needs analysis up front is going to help you really get the most out of this, because you're going to have the right product on the right person, and it's going to be worn in the proper way and in the proper place, right? Get all those things right, and you're going to have a much better experience, both on your end and on the client's end. Okay. Utilize, as I said, heart rate data before, during, and after training. Okay, before the session, create training targets. Okay, and this is, some of these things go across personal training and group training. I think I put in bold the things that are specifically for live group sessions, but a lot of these things go across both places. But you can plan before the session. You can customize training based on all these different factors. Okay, so you can set goals based on duration, distance, calories. Okay, you can see live feedback during the session, and we can analyze things post-session because all those analytical tools will be there. Take advantage of the features. Okay, at a minimum, you're going to know your members. So I love this one on the side here. You forget people's names all the time when they first come in. Take advantage of that feature. Put some names right there up on the board if you're using a group solution. Okay, it's not the same if you're using personal training, but you have that at your fingertips. Calorie bonuses, those little goals, those little trophies that you can now utilize as a result of having something like this. Take advantage of those, invest in those, understand how they work, and celebrate those. That's really going to help with motivation. Okay, this is a big review, so I'm going to go through this pretty quick, especially since we're coming up on time here. Every session that we've done, we've talked about these training zones, so I'm going to go through this, but it's important that you do understand what they are, and they're just plainly what they are described as you see here. Okay, you've got 5 zones from light to maximum, and they go in 10% increments, and where someone falls, as I told you before, is going to be based on their max heart rate and their actual beats per minute at the time, right, where they fall. Okay. Zone 1, very light. Okay, not going to be doing a whole bunch of training in this zone, but it's great for some light recovery if you need it. Okay, Zone 2, light training for base building. That can be a humbling experience if you're not a runner and you're out of shape. Okay, you might end up having to walk while you're doing some base building instead of running. Okay, it benefits basic endurance and fat burning. It's also a recovery zone, but you're going to be, training at the lower end of that, somewhere around 65%. Okay. Anaerobic threshold, this is an important one if you're doing different types of training. It's important to know where that is. It's about 65% of heart rate max for most people, so make a note of that. Zone 3, this is the moderate level. This is where you really start to get some big benefits and improve your aerobic fitness. Okay, so this is a moderate intensity. You're going to see some benefits from it in terms of your health. It's not just for recovery or base building, and actually can improve your fitness. Okay, it improves efficiency of blood circulation in the heart and skeletal muscles. Zone 4, this is a hot button item in the industry. Everybody's all about HIIT training and pushing people at this level. The reason why this level is great is because people can get into zone 4, somewhere in the middle, around 85%, right? That's your anaerobic threshold. They can get somewhere in there, and they can actually maintain that intensity for a reasonable amount of time. So when we only have 30 minutes or 40 minutes with someone, we can actually maximize the amount of calories that we burn in a short amount of time. And then, and I'm not going to get into this a whole bunch, but that's where people start talking about EPOC or afterburn, different things like that, right? So zone 4 is basically your HIIT zone, and it is where you are going to hit your anaerobic threshold, somewhere around 85 to 90% of heart rate max. Zone 5 is maximum effort, okay? Performance and speed. This is an all-out effort, and usually you can't maintain this for longer than 5 minutes. So keep that in mind when you're training, especially athletes, so you're not pushing them too hard or for too long. Okay, just in summary, you've got a couple of things here. You got anaerobic threshold, aerobic threshold, 65 and 85%. MVPA occurs at 70 to 100. That's the green, orange, and red zones. The HIIT zone, as I mentioned, is the zone 4. That's yellow. Zone 3 would be like a rest phase in a HIIT type training, okay, but your work phases would be in zone 4, and zone 2 is aerobic base building, basic endurance, fat burn, and some recovery runs or recovery sessions. Okay, keep in mind when you're using the zones that it's not always faster or harder, right? It's sometimes how smart you are when you're training. Okay, the precision. Okay, you want to train with the right intensity. You want to train at different intensities because those different intensities will give you different benefits, and you want to train with different heart rate intensities as well. I think I just was redundant there. I could have eliminated that from my side. Sorry about that, guys. I'll pull that out. Okay, and then you want to train hard at the intensities for short periods if you're doing some interval type training. So lots of different things you can do with the zones and understand how to use it. Finally, we'll get to recovery. This is also a bit of a review. Obviously, I spent some more time on the other things, so I'll go through this quickly. resting heart rate or heart rate rest is the lowest number of beats per minute that you can achieve when at a complete rest. And usually this is done in the supine position laying down. You want to take this test multiple times in order to get an accurate reading, because you never know, there could be some stress or things on your body. But essentially the reason why you can use resting heart rate as a way of showing growth is because it's decreased as a result of cardiovascular conditioning. Okay, so the lower the resting heart rate, the healthier the person typically is. And so if you've got a starting point of 80 beats per minute and now they're at 60, then we've shown improvement. That's a mini win. It's probably not going to happen that drastically. Usually takes about 6 weeks to make significant gains, but you could see some small gains within that 6-week period, right? How do we determine rest? I already told you it was in the supine position, laying down, and you want to do it on consecutive days, 5 or 6 times, and really make sure that all of the testing scenarios are the same, right? You want to be able to reproduce the same conditions. Recovery heart rate is another one that we can use, and recovery heart rate basically allows you to do a simple test. Many times it's a 2-minute test. Okay, so you can rev your heart rate up to a certain spot. I kind of like doing it near the end of workouts. There's lots of different recovery tests you can use. You can look them up online. I've got an example in my slides here. But basically, you're going to rev your heart rate up to a certain point. You're going to hold that for a couple of minutes, and then you're actually going to take a break and completely rest for 1 to 2 minutes, depending on your rest interval. And the amount of beats that your heart rate recovers over that period is your recovery heart rate. The bigger the gap, right, the bigger the difference between the two numbers, the high and the low, generally speaking, the better overall fitness a person has achieved. Okay, here's an example of a 2-minute recovery test. And these are great because you can do these anytime, anywhere, and you can show little bits of growth or sometimes lack thereof, but you can show progress and many wins to customers in other ways than hopping on the scale, right, or looking in the mirror. And see, here's another way to show growth, and this wouldn't be available to you without utilizing heart rate based training. Okay, here are some recovery intervals. You don't even have to give a test to show that someone's improved. When people come to gyms, oftentimes they're usually pretty out of shape, a lot of times depending on the type of gym. And you'll notice when they first come to you and they do a HIIT session, their heart rate is pretty straight across the board, almost no recoveries because their body's in complete shock. You'll notice over time with training that these little valleys will appear. So you have your peaks during the hard work phases, but you'll also have some recoveries during those phases, during those rest phases, which don't really appear, or they're definitely not as pronounced when someone is less fit. We like to say in the industry that the steeper and the deeper the drop off, the higher the overall fitness of the individual. And this is actually my preferred method of using heart rate recovery as a way of showing growth. I look at the heart rate graphs and I like to share that with the clients. Average heart rate is another one, okay? And it's a very simple test. You guys are probably aware, if you hop on a treadmill and you go for X number of time at the same speed, at the same incline for a pretest, do it again 6 weeks later. If your average heart rate decreases, then you know that you've improved your fitness. If it increases, then the opposite potentially, or if it makes no change, then you've made no change. So average heart rate, but the conditions need to be the same to show growth. And last but not least is a unique one. It's normally difficult to test, not in lab settings, but Polar has a wrist-based resting heart rate VO2 max test, where you can lay down for 5 minutes or so, and it'll actually use some heart rate variability and some different things to give a pretty good estimation of VO2 max. And again, this takes about 6 weeks to see change. So you give the test at 6-week intervals, and you hope to see some change in that VO2 max. Here's a quick graphical display of what those VO2 max numbers should be for individuals at certain ages, and it ranks each of those spots or each of those stages from very poor to excellent, depending on the number. As you can see, the higher the number goes, the better the VO2 max. And the polar fitness test is about 86 to 93% accurate when compared to the laboratory settings, which is pretty good for a free and resting test, as opposed to giving an all-out effort. And you can kind of benchmark that over time and really use it to show growth. And it shows up in that diary that we were telling you about. So this is what it looks like on a graph, and this is it trended over time. And you have that at your fingertips as a trainer or as an instructor. Okay. Finally, these are our learning objectives in summary. I hope that I've covered each one of these pieces for you in detail. And I hope that you learned a lot today. And I certainly hope that you have questions. We're going to hope to answer a few of them here in a second. And I know that we take some of those questions after the fact, and they are put into a blog. Once we've answered them, you guys can access those after the training. So feel free to comment and question on the training we had today. And without further ado, Paul, if you're ready, I can take some questions.
Thank you, Brett. A very informative and helpful presentation for our attendees today. We are past the top of the hour, so we are not going to take any live questions today, but we have been capturing the questions that have been submitted through the GoToWebinar platform, and we'll be sharing those with Brett, and he will answer those in a blog that we will post on the ACSM website. So visit us to find answers to those questions. Have a great afternoon, and this concludes today's webinar.